Within 10 minutes, everything was done, and Barbara was already restless again. When are we going to the hotel? She asked impatiently, in her incredibly erotic, deep, raspy voice, fidgeting like a small child. I wondered why she was fidgeting like that. I had no idea what was to follow. Relax, darling, Freddie said only briefly, at first, because for him, despite all of the partying, fun and rock and roll, work in our case, creative work always came first. She wants a line again, he hissed softly in my direction. He was talking, of course, about cocaine, the drug of the time. I nodded knowingly and thought to myself, this could be fun. We shook hands. It will be great tomorrow, I said, simultaneously reassuring Freddie and myself. I know, Freddie grins, off to the hotel. Cocaine was something of trendy drug in those days. I'd been exposed to it before Queen, with the Rolling Stones on tour, or even through my work with Falco. But with Queen, it became a habit. When your idols, who were later to become friends, took it all the time and often invited you, the young director Rudi, who of course was also driven by the hubris of finally belonging to the Champions League of rock stars, he was supposed to say no thank you? No way. Without realizing it, I also got myself into a serious drug problem, which was to cause me a lot of trouble years later. But back then, give it to me was my motto. That's what you do in the inner circle of rock stars. Now you belong, I thought. This was part of the sex, drugs and rock and roll lifestyle that I had previously described in countless TV documentaries. Now I was in the middle of it. Without thinking much about it, fuck it, bring it on, we are invincible, or so I thought. The hotel in Augsburg was not a 5-star hotel, and Freddie's room was not a presidential suite. But Freddie remained calm. He was like that. When he had decided to do something, he didn't snag about little things. Freddie Mercury was no diva, on the contrary. Come on, Rudi, let's have some fun. Freddie demanded convincingly even now. We decided on my room. Why exactly, I don't remember. It was clear to me that Minister of Pleasure Barbara had brought cocaine from Munich, and the three of us were about to give ourselves some lines. I don't remember hesitating for a single second. Nobody is to blame but me. As the director and producer of the show, I had a better room than most of the team members of the TV show. But the sight of it was still poor and exuded the charm of an East German hotel. Small bathroom, shower only, cheap soaps, grungy towels. In the corner stood a bed, in the middle a relatively large table with a worn couch and 2 armchairs. But what a luxury! The room had a balcony. Fresh air was just most important after entering my room anyway. It was a bit musty, and my dirty laundry was lying on a pile in the corner. I had copied Keith Richards when he had such a pile lying next to the bed during an interview in London in 1979, when he told me, "That's rock and roll." Barbara looked at the room door twice after she had put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the outside handle. Then she virtually stormed out onto the balcony. That's how badly she needs fresh air, I thought. My dirty laundry mountain doesn't stink that much, does it? Finally, Barbara whooped ecstatically. What, at least? I was beginning to get curious. Come on, Rudi, let's watch. Freddie said with a mischievous grin. You've got to see this. This is Barbara Valentin show. It will be fun. I didn't understand a single thing he meant. Barbara Valentin show? What did he mean by that? The question did not remain unanswered for long. It was a Barbara show. And what a show. There she stood, wide-legged, her skirt pushed up, bent over, the deeply cleaved top groaning under the weight of her large breasts. Moaning loudly, she reached between her legs to her vagina, as if she were. Barbara, darling, get the coke out of your cunt, Freddie motioned to her, laughing, directing her, so to speak. Then turning to me, he asked, Well, did I promise you too much? He hadn't. I had never seen anything like it before, and I was by no means an inexperienced young man in that respect, but that... Barbara had obviously transported the cocaine from Munich in her vagina, out of fear and caution of the police. After all, she had a particular reputation in Germany. Most likely, she also wanted to protect Freddie. In that moment, she retrieved the package. And how? A first-class spectacle. A former cult director, Rainer Werner Fassbinder, would have enjoyed it and could possibly have used this scene as inspiration for a scandalous film. We did it! Barbara triumphantly held a condom with an estimated 5 grams of cocaine in her hands. Her facial expression revealed that this retrieval action had also given her some pleasure. And who knows if Freddie hadn't been there. Personally, I found Barbara to be a very attractive woman, even sexually, despite her full body. "Show me your cunt, darling," Freddie snapped me out of my reverie. "Did you really get it all out?" He laughed uproariously. "Let the party begin." What followed was a set and rehearsed ritual among cocaine users like Barbara, Freddie and me, using a credit card to crush the white chunks of cocaine on the tabletop, spreading them flat over the top, and finally pulling them up our noses with a rolled-up bill. So there we were. The illusion of taking only 1 or 2 of those lines was always there and always remained an illusion. "Barbara, darling," Freddie said with a grin, "I love you." The relationship between Barbara and Freddie was a very special one. That had been clear to me for some time, but on this evening I was able to experience how intimate it really was between the two of them, and that one could definitely speak of a love relationship. A very special love affair between a gay man and a former sex symbol of an entire generation, as well as a great actress. The way Barbara and Freddie treated each other. Now that there was really no one else around. No assistants, no manager, not even Freddie's partner Jim Hutton or Mary Austin, was remarkably tender, loving and completely attuned to each other. If you didn't know that Freddie was into men, you wouldn't have hesitated for a second to say that these two are lovers. They truly were. And the cocaine did what cocaine does. It puts you into an artificial euphoria. You feel insanely great, you don't stop talking. Yak yak, another line. Yakety yak, another line. Talking, and another line. There was enough of it. My estimate was about right. There were 3 to 5 grams of cocaine on the table. In this coke-talking mood, of course, you spout a lot of verbal garbage. You vomit things out of your innermost being. But there are also moments of a mood of, I would call it absolute truth. A mood in which you believe, feel, think you can tell your counterpart everything, now the whole truth. Such a moment suddenly came over Freddie. "You know, Rudi," Freddie's tone suddenly became very different. "Someone like me often wonders, who really loves me? As a gay man, I'm not likely to bring children of my own into the world who could really love me. How can I tell that the partner really loves me, the person? And not the superstar Freddie Mercury." Momentarily, the room fell silent. Even Barbara, by nature a rather loud person, even when she was not talking, listened almost devoutly, just as I did. The situation reminded me strikingly of the conversation after our first video shoot in London, after one vision in Freddie's apartment, and somewhat belatedly the thought dawned on me that this gush of words at that time had perhaps also been triggered by cocaine. "That's the big question of my life," Freddie continued unperturbed. "Where and how and in whom do I find real love? Without calculation, without ulterior motives, unconditional love. That's what I'm looking for." He took a drag from a cigarette. "Actually, all my life. For the first time since I had known Freddie, I had the impression that his eyes were getting wet. Barbara and I were transfixed. I didn't know what to say. Freddie had just poured his heart out to me. To break the silence that had become almost unbearable, Barbara burst into the conversation in her inimitable way. "I love you, darling." With all her fullness, she sat down on Freddie's lap, almost smothering him, and gave him a kiss. "And I love your tits," Freddie replied, pulling himself out of his melancholy with one fell swoop, buying his face in Barbara's tits. Then he shot a question in my direction. "Don't you love her tits, Rudi?" I did, but to be honest, What I had just heard still had me so under its spell that I was a rarity at a loss for words. This moment had burned itself firmly into my soul. The search of Freddie Mercury for true love. An aspect that Freddie would later tell me about in more detail on another occasion in connection with Winnie Kirchberger and Jim Hutton. "Let's take another line," suggested Pleasure Minister Barbara, and neither Freddie nor I disagreed. The whole coke hustle and bustle and chatting came to each other went on. We started at about 9 p.m. and before the bar closed, we ordered 2 bottles of champagne and a bottle of vodka, although Freddie and I knew that the rehearsal and recording of this performance was scheduled for 8:30 in the morning. But as I said, as always, we were the culprits of the illusion that it would stop at 1 or 2 lines. I told Freddie about my love problems, Barbara about the times with Rainer Werner Fassbinder, also a gifted cokehead. We rolled out plans for joint projects, which of course were only as attractive in cocaine intoxication as we believed at the time. It got later and later, and went all night. Suddenly, a clanking noise startled me. Barbara had apparently dozed off, and the champagne glass had fallen out of her hands. Freddie was hanging on the sofa, I on my bed. I glanced at the clock. 6:30 in the morning. Shit, it was already dawn. Jesus.